You tell yourself you'll start in 5 minutes. Then 5 minutes turns into 30. And suddenly it's midnight and you're stressed, exhausted, and wondering how this keeps happening. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bedtime Stories, the Mind at Midnight podcast. I'm Jaylim, and today we're talking about sleep, procrastination, and mental health, and how they're way more connected than we usually realize. This isn't about being lazy or irresponsible. It's about understanding what's really going on when we avoid work, lose sleep, and feel overwhelmed. So, first, what is procrastination? A lot of people think procrastination means you don't care, but for most of the time, it's the opposite. Procrastination comes from feeling overwhelmed, the fear of doing something wrong, the pressure to do something perfectly, or not knowing where to start. And when something feels this emotionally heavy, our brain looks for relief, and scrolling, watching videos, or doing anything else feels easier in the moment. So procrastination isn't a time problem. It's often a stress and mental health related problem. And let's move on to how it can kind of interfere with our sleep. So when we put off things during the day, they don't just disappear, they end up moving to nighttime. So we tell ourselves, I'll stay up and finish it, I work better at night. And that for sure is something that I have definitely said. Or I'll sleep after this, kind of setting sleep as the end goal and like having to do work as a means to an end. But staying up late usually comes with more stress, worse focus, and less patience with ourselves. And instead of feeling accomplished, we often feel guilty, anxious, or disappointed, which makes it even harder to sleep. So, a lack of sleep can really affect your mental health more than we actually expect. When you're tired, stress can feel heavier, anxiety can get louder, and this is a big one, your motivation drops, and then small tasks start to feel huge. And when your mental health is truly struggling, procrastination becomes more likely because everything feels harder to face. And I can definitely attest to this one. When we're stressed out in school, it's finals week, or we have projects coming up, we feel ourselves getting more stressed. Our mental health is put on a strain because we're trying our best. It's definitely easier to procrastinate, to say, okay, I'm going to get home from school and I'm going to take a nap. And then when I wake up, I'll do my work. But then when you wake up, you start scrolling and your work doesn't really start till midnight. And then suddenly it's 2 a.m. and you haven't finished your assignment and you have to wake up for school in 3.5 hours. I've definitely been in those shoes. And when your mental health is struggling like that, it creates a cycle. Poor sleep leads to worse mental health. And that leads to more procrastination. And that means that you will get even less sleep. It's a vicious cycle. It truly is, because your mental health is so dependent on how you're taking care of yourself. So even like if you're in a state where you're not feeling your best, you're feeling tired, maybe you're struggling with your mental health, that could also lead you to procrastinate and say, I'm really not up to it right now. And then later on, when you have to do it, it feels like it's such a huge mountain you have to climb over because you've been putting it off for so long, because you don't feel like you're up for it. And it's okay to not feel up for it, because breaking that cycle isn't about trying harder, it's about understanding yourself better. So, one of the hardest parts of procrastination is the guilt. This guilt spiral where you know what you need to do and you tell yourself you should be doing it, and the guilt just sits there all day. This is so true. I feel like it even extends into school break. For example, like right now, my school's on winter break, and I found myself at the beginning feeling on edge, feeling like something was looming over me, because I've always been in a state of, oh my goodness, I have homework to do. Oh my goodness, this is coming up. And now that I finally don't have anything that I need to be doing, I still feel that guilt and that anxiety. And the guilt can make starting even scarier, especially when there is something you have to be doing. So we avoid the task again, and then we beat ourselves up for avoiding it. But this guilt doesn't create motivation, it just creates exhaustion. Because being harsh with yourself doesn't make things easier, it usually makes them heavier. So, some healthy ways to break the cycle aren't about fixing everything at once. Sometimes it can start with breaking tasks into smaller pieces. Maybe make a list of things you need to do and start with the easier ones, because sometimes quantity does matter. There's a list of 5 things and one of them is going to take you a long time, but 4 of them you can knock out in an hour. So attacking those tasks that you know you can accomplish in the moment can really help you build momentum into doing that one thing you really don't want to do that you've been putting off for so long. And then another thing is starting something imperfectly. You don't have to do something 100% perfectly in order for it to get done. And this is such a big thing with academic pressure or the pressure to perform well at school, at work. Things don't always have to be perfect, but it is important that we are putting in our effort. And then finally, giving yourself permission to rest without actually earning it. I am definitely guilty of this one, of having an assignment that I need to do or a task I need to do around my house or for my family and saying, I'm not going to go to sleep until I get this done. But then I never really start doing it, and then I'm just delaying my sleep. Sleep doesn't have to be a reward for productivity because rest helps you function both mentally and emotionally. It's okay to need to rest a little bit in order for you to feel recharged to do this task. Procrastination doesn't mean you're necessarily failing. It usually means you're overwhelmed and you need support or space. So if we take a few moments to think about the topics of today's episode, let's answer some questions. Are you avoiding tasks or avoiding how they make you feel? So I feel like this is a really big one, that sometimes the feeling of doom or the feeling of fear that you have before doing a task can often be more overwhelming than the task itself. I mean, if you need to do your laundry, but you're just so tired and it feels like something you just can't do in the moment, it seems like a lot bigger of a task than it is than when you're actually doing it. So I feel like we need to really consider that. Like, am I scared I don't want to do this task, or am I just scared of the feeling that it's bringing me? Am I just scared of like the guilt of not doing it? And then next, what happens to your mental health when you don't sleep enough? This is something I feel like everyone should reflect on, and I've taken time to do it myself. I found that when I don't sleep enough, I can be very irritable. I will often feel more anxious, and honestly, I won't be as social. I mean, I'll come to school, I'll do all my work, but I won't feel like talking to anybody. And then when I come home, rather than spending time with my family, it can be easier to go lay down or go rest. And that rest is important. But I feel like it's a much healthier cycle to go to sleep on time and then be able to come home and hang out with family and then still go to bed on time. And then one last question, what would change if you treated yourself with more patience? So this was a question that I posed in the last solo episode that I recorded when I was talking about academic pressure on top of like extracurriculars and jobs. And I talked about like how it doesn't always have to be, you don't always have to be pushing something. You don't always have to be pushing yourself to your limits. And I think this still applies to procrastination, because even though you could be procrastinating a task that, yes, you really do need to get done and it really is important to get done, you also need to be more patient with yourself and realize that you are only human, and as long as you are putting that effort in, that is what matters. Of course, there is a healthy balance to everything. Like, you shouldn't neglect all of your tasks and stuff. But when you can establish that balance with yourself to be able to weigh, am I able to do this, or is this going to be detrimental to my mental health or how I'm going to feel tomorrow, you can better understand yourself and the patterns that are associated like with your rest patterns, how you feel after being rested or not rested. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to be perfect to make progress, and you don't need to suffer to be successful. Honestly, just getting started is often half the battle, and once you're actually doing a task, it can be a lot easier to accomplish after you've jumped that hurdle and realized, hey, this is not necessarily so as difficult or so bad as I thought it would be. So, there's some big takeaways from what we've talked about today. You need to take care of your mind and take care of your sleep. That is so important because your mental health can be easily affected by your rest patterns. So, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Bedtime Stories, the Mind at Midnight podcast. If this episode felt familiar or you felt that you resonated with it, that's okay, because you are not alone. I'm definitely in the boat of I've definitely procrastinated at some point, especially about school. And make sure you just remember that struggling with this doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It means that you're experiencing a pattern that a lot of people do. And we just need to get more familiar with how we can best function and like our productivity patterns. So, if you enjoyed this episode, please let us know, and always don't forget to check out our Instagram, our TikTok at mineatmidnight.hosa. We also have sleep playlists and rest playlists on our Spotify, and make sure you go to our link tree that is in the link in our Instagram bio or on our website to see all of our social media platforms or find your mental health resources. We have plenty of them that we've compiled, so if you are struggling, you can go onto our website and perhaps find a resource that suits you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Jaylim, and I hope you have a great day.